Hi everyone, I'm telling you something about the Edwardian age. So, the period between the death of Queen Victoria in 1901 and the outbreak of World War I. After Queen Victoria died, her son, Edward, became king with the name of Edward VII. He became the head of a powerful empire covering 1/5 of the globe, and we can say that British towns were the wealthiest in Europe. Moreover, 80% of the world trade was carried by British ships, so it was a very rich and powerful country indeed. However, in America, in the USA, the United States were becoming more and more industrialized, and so they were becoming a competitor to Britain. And also in Europe, some countries like France and Germany, for example, they were becoming industrial technological competitors to Britain. And some of them, especially France and most of all Germany, they had also imperialistic ambition. Germany wanted to contrast, to oppose the British naval power and was building a fleet at the moment to challenge British naval power. But King Edward, who reigned only for 9 years until 1910, was really good at foreign policy. He was a very good diplomat. For example, he signed the Entente Cordiale with France in 1904. It was an agreement which allowed Britain to pursue its own interest in Egypt, while France could do the same thing in Morocco. So the two nations were splitting, let's say, the land where they could pursue their own interest. So Edward's diplomacy allowed the creation of new alignment in Europe. So Britain, France, and Russia were together and could help one another against Germany, Austria, and Italy, which were on the other side. As far as society, we can say that Edward England was similar to Victorian England. Classes were really defined. Moral values were officially to be respected, and poverty was still a problem for a large amount of the population. And this is why a welfare state started developing when in 1906 the Liberals won the election. Let's say there were two groups of liberals. There were those, the traditional liberals, who supported liberal values like the laissez-faire, the idea of free commerce, and self-help, the idea that the government shouldn't intervene to help its citizens. On the other side, and there were new liberals, and among them, a very famous one was David Lloyd George. They thought that it was important for the state to intervene and help in social life. So they had to take reforms in order to help those who needed them the most. So they wanted to develop a welfare state, that is, a system by which the government can provide services or benefits to the people living within its borders, to the people living there, to the citizens, and especially, of course, those in need. So David Lloyd George was the Chancellor of the Exchequer, which is the department of the government in charge of receiving, issuing, and accounting for money belonging to the state. And this is why he helped introducing different reforms. The one about free school meals. Children could eat at school for free. In 1907, free school medical inspection for children at school, and they could see doctors and don't pay for that, be checked and controlled without paying. In 1908, the Children's Act gave children some protection because it restricted, it said, under a certain age, people, children, couldn't buy neither alcohol nor cigarette. The Old Age Pension Act was introduced, which gave a pension of 1 to 5 shillings to people over 70 years old, or the minimum wages were fixed in 1909. The wages are the money earned for manual or unqualified work. Okay? Or in 1911, the National Insurance Act. It gave people right to free medical treatment and sickness benefits. In case they were ill, they could stay home and have their wages nonetheless. Okay, so let's go back to this David Lloyd George. He was Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he proposed in 1910 a budget which was renamed the People's Budget. And this because, of course, it aimed at helping people. But this budget, this proposal for spending state money, was rejected by the House of Lords because its members didn't want to pay more taxes in order to help poor people. So what happened? There was a moment of a tempest, a moment of disagreement within the parliament, and this conflict inside the parliament had the liberals decide that the House of the Lords must be reformed. And in this year, King Edward died, and his son became King George V, and King George reigned from 1910 until 1936. The following year, in 1911, the Parliament Act passed, and it was very important because it stated that the Lords didn't have the veto on money bills passed in the Commons. They didn't have this veto anymore. The veto is the possibility to say no to a money bill. And they couldn't veto, but they could delay a bill for 2 years. And they also decided in the Parliament Act that a general election would be held at least every 5 years. This innovation, this decision are still operating today. So, in 1911, a series of strikes happened, and they were violent strikes. People were protesting because prices were high and wages were low. So Mr. Lloyd George responded with unemployment benefits and health insurance. So he responded in a positive way to a very difficult situation. Let's say about the suffragette. You know, they were part of the Women's Social and Political Union, the WSPU, founded by Mrs. Emmeline Pankhurst in 1903. But they were women, educated ladies, even in the 1800s, who thought women should vote. So it was not a new idea. But the suffragette made those ideas become really popular. They wanted vote for women. They did marches in London, going around and telling their ideas aloud. But at a certain point, they gained massive publicity with their protest marches, but they also broke the law. Their campaign became vandalic. They chained themselves to railing to protest, and this was not vandalic, but they made arson attacks. So they set fire on post boxes, churches, railway station. They broke windows with stones. So they were behaving in a really vandalic way. And so the government dealt with this situation in a very strong and hard way, and sent suffragettes to prison. When they got to prison, they continued protesting through a hunger strike. So they decided not to eat anymore, and so some of them were forced feeded. So they were given things to eat against their will. In the end, the suffragette succeeded. In 1918, women over 30 years old could vote in England, and 10 years later, in 1928, all women over 21 were allowed to vote. So let's see about the outbreak of World War I. In 1914, a Serbian nationalist assassinated the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne. And together with the Archduke, his wife was killed in Sarajevo. So this event triggered an immediate reaction of Austria, which bombed Belgrade, the capital of Serbia. And the German Kaiser, Wilhelm II, declared war on Russia and then on France. So Germany invaded Belgium, which was a neutral country, in order to attack France from an unexpected position. And so Britain had a commercial blockade, had the threat of a commercial blockade, because Germany and his navy were present both on the North Sea and on the Channel. And so Britain declared war to Germany on the 4th of August 1914. So what happened? Germany attacked France, passing through Belgium, so to be unexpected. And then Belgium, as I told you, was neutral, so was not taking part in any war. And England was scared about a blockade for its commerce, because